Featured in this episode is everything you need to get motivated for an obstacle course race. Joining me is Ryan Kennedy, a certified Spartan coach. Ryan is on pace to do 40 plus obstacle course races in 2019 alone. Not only does Ryan do races himself, but for a living, he coaches and trains people to get mentally and physically prepared to race as well. We discuss some of the factors that go into training for obstacle courses, including how Ryan takes care of his body before and after races, what do his training programs look like, and some of the personal obstacles he helps people overcome to achieve their goals. Ryan's energy is absolutely contagious. There's no doubt you'll be feeling motivated after this one.
The Prehab audio experience will teach you how to take control of your health through knowledge by optimizing performance, promoting longevity, and keeping your movement system in tune. Welcome to your host, the Prehab Guys.
This is Ryan Kennedy. So Spartan Coach Ryan and I, we went to Penn State together for undergrad studies. And we're going to talk today about everything you need to know to do obstacle courses. So Ryan, introduced you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So like you said, it's funny because me and you went to Penn State together. And it's awesome to see what you guys have done. Because I followed you, since you went off to school. And it's cool because I think you would agree that we were two totally different people like 10 years ago. We wouldn't be on Instagram Live. We'd be at, this would be more like a frat party meetup.
For sure.
So it's been awesome to see what you guys have done. And then, like we talked about before, I started training privately about 10 years ago. And then about 5 years ago, I started to get into Spartan Race and other types of obstacle course racing. And then last year is when I really dove into it head on. I got my Spartan SGX certification. And this has really taken over like almost 100% of what I do with my career now is getting people ready for these types of events and races.
So what I'm most curious about is how did you even get interested in obstacle races? I've done one and I'm not sure if I'm going to do another one again.
Yeah, which race did you do?
I did a Tough Mudder.
Okay.
We did it while we were in PT school, and it was fun. But it was pretty brutal. So I see you doing these races all the time. I would just love to know, how did you get into them, and what continues to motivate you to do more?
Yeah. So how I found out about it was I was at a Perform Better Summit. So I was in Providence, Rhode Island about 5 years ago, and that summer the keynote speaker was Joe DeCina, who's the CEO and founder of Spartan Race. So I was like, I'd heard of Spartan Race before, so I was like, I'll go check out the talk. I really liked his story and the company's story and what he had to say. So I ended up, I met him, I purchased his book. So Spartan Up was his first book. And I started to read it, and there was a lot of stories about, how the race has transformed. And, it just got me thinking, I should try one out. So this was back in like 2015. So I did my first race that year, and I was like instantly hooked. I loved it, and I've done about 50 plus races since. Like you said, you see me. So my big goal for this year is to complete over 40 races, which is only 52 weekends in a year. So that's why you see me doing it. That's why I see me doing it all the time.
Yeah, that's a lot of races.
Yeah, it's been something that has been super motivating for me. I think the goal for me as a coach is the more races I do, the more I'm able to teach and to coach other people better. So that's why my goal is to do so many this year. I've been learning a lot about, pre-race nutrition, recovery tactics, different training methods. So, the more I kind of put myself through this, the more I've learned and the more I'm able to help other people, perform in the sport.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to get into that later. I want to know, because for everyone that's tuning in, Ryan's actually doing a race tomorrow. So I'm going to ask him later about what he did tonight, what he's been doing the past month. A lot of interesting things, because you want to do more than 40 races this year, only 52 weeks in a year. That's a lot. How many did you do last year?
So last year I finished, I think it was either 15 or 16.
Okay.
You're talking about more than double for this year.
Yeah. So we're going to get into that because I want to know, how are you taking care of yourself? What have you been learning along the way, and sort of how are you coaching others so that they can tackle their goals?
Yeah, totally.
So it's interesting. It's funny because the first time I did a race was 2015 as well. Now you've done much more races than me. For someone that has never done an obstacle race, can you share what it's like to do one? What is it like to consistently train for them?
Yeah, so I'll speak to mostly Spartan. I mean, most of my races, the sport has grown so big that there's so many different obstacle course racing organizations now. So now you have things like Tough Mudder still going, obviously. You have Savage Race. You have the OCR World Championships now, which is huge. But primarily I race in Spartan. Um, so in Spartan, so if you're not familiar with the sport, it's obstacle course racing, right? So it's trail running mixed with all these different types of obstacles, some of them being strength-based, some of them looking more like something you'd see in American Ninja Warrior. So that's why I think it's such a cool sport because it mixes so many different fitness qualities. There is the endurance factor of running. There is the relative body strength, being able to do something like a rope climb or monkey bars. And then there is some of the strength-based obstacles, which I love, which are like the Atlas carry, basically picking up an Atlas stone, the sandbag carry, the bucket carry. So it's so cool to me that it's such a mixed sport where you need to develop so many different types of qualities. That's where, from a programming and training standpoint, it gets a little complicated sometimes. And it depends what type of athlete you want to be. So the sport caters to basically everybody because there is the sprint distance race, which is only about 5K, the super distance, which is about 15K, and then the beast race is a half marathon, and then they've introduced all these different ultra distances. So it's drawing people from all different communities. You got some of the CrossFitters that like the shorter races that are more like the sprint, but then you also have the ultra endurance people who run the 50Ks and the 24-hour runs. So if you're looking to get into the sport, it's interesting because you have to develop so many different skill sets in the beginning. So in the beginning, you can play to your strengths, but you might be so terrible at so many different other things. So it's amazing when you look at some of the elite athletes. Some of them were former wrestlers. Some of them were triathletes. Some of them were Army Rangers. Some of them were runners. But all from these different backgrounds, they can all compete in this sport, which I think makes it so cool.
And I want you to let's continue talking about this because you mentioned some of the ultra races, and I know that you did an ultra yourself. It looked like it was in Iceland, correct?
Yeah, so that was
So tell us about this crazy race because that looked wild.
Yeah, so they last year, so they've always had so like I said, one level of Spartan racing is called the Beast, which is the half marathon distance. And they always had something that was called the Ultra Beast, which is where you did the Beast twice. So the Beast was a half marathon and you did 2 laps. So you did a full marathon and you did all of the obstacles twice, which would come out to about a full marathon with 60 different obstacles. So last year they rebranded the Ultra and they made it 50K. So now it's 31 total miles. So you do the Beast course twice and you actually do an extra 5K added in there with it. So Craig, you knew me a long time ago. I don't think you would see me as someone who would get into running ultra distances coming from more of a football / powerlifting background. So now it's funny that I run, Spartan Ultras because, I spent 10 years not even running a mile. So it's so basically when they rebranded the Ultra, they made the Ultra World Championship race. So now Spartan had 2 branches of World Championship races. So they had the regular World Championship race, which was every year at Lake Tahoe. And then this past year, the Ultra World Championship race was in Iceland. So instead of doing the 50K format, it was a 24-hour race. So there was a course set up that was about 8 miles long, and you ran this course as many times as you could in 24 hours.
It's crazy.
And I don't know how many people out there have been to Iceland in December, but the sun only comes out for about an hour. So we started at 12 noon and the sun was out, and it promptly went down in about an hour and never came back out for the whole extent of the race.
Running in the dark.
Yeah, so we were running these 8-mile loops in the dark through Iceland, off to the side of a small town, that maybe had 1,000 people in it. So this was, probably my most extreme experience thus far. But it was really, it was a lot of fun.
It's amazing, especially because I know you on a personal level and I know your background and where you come from. So to see you do that, it just, it talks about how if you put your mind to anything, you can do it. It's just how you train and how you prepare your body for it. Like some people will say, I wasn't built to do cardio, or I wasn't built to lift weights. And, you can build yourself. It just may take time. So to go into that, I follow your personal Instagram, and I'm sure your neighbors probably think you're crazy because there's a guy pushing sleds down the street, carrying water jugs, concrete, you name it. Training for this sport is maybe a little bit more unconventional than going to the gym and getting on a treadmill or picking up dumbbells. Tell us about the training. What do you do? And if someone were to sign up for your program at your gym, where do you start? How does someone get into training for obstacle races?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Like if you think about, how you would train any athlete, the thing you need to know in the beginning is what do they need for their sport, right? So some type of needs analysis, like what what qualities do they need to develop to excel in their sport? This sport is so new, and not many people are coaching it. Spartan has a huge amount of coaches now, and it's growing every day. But in the beginning, like I said, there's such a mix of athletes that come into the sport. And that's why it's so amazing, because it's such a mix of qualities that you're going to have your advantages, and your strengths and your weaknesses are going to be so pronounced. So basically what I had to do when I started coaching the sport was to develop the thought process of like, what do people need? And like, how do I figure out what this person needs to get better at, to excel in this sport? So just like with anybody else, you'll look for their weaknesses. So for this sport, like I said, it's a mix of running. At the end of the day, it's a trail running sport. So I would look at something like, how fast can this person run a mile on average? How does that become different when they go outside? So we always talk about a treadmill mile is much different than a trail mile. I don't know if you've done much trail running, but you'll see your pace is very different than if you're, having consistent effort on a treadmill.
Uh-huh.
It's an interesting skill to learn is technical running, running through steep trails, going down descents with rocks and roots and all types of different other stuff, and running, Spartan loves to use the terrain. So you run up big hills and you run through thorn bushes. And so it's interesting to see how someone runs inside versus outside. If someone could throw their headphones in and crank up the treadmill and try to keep themselves moving with the belt for an hour. But when you get outside and you get on some rugged trails, it's a little bit different than running inside. So we do a lot of run practice. We do a lot of technique work. We go on, my team, we go on runs, we go on long runs, short runs, we do speed work. So it's like on one side, I'm kind of like a track coach slash. So I would say one major component of it is looking at how somebody is able to navigate and run through a trail, right? Versus running indoors. Someone might be a pretty good indoor runner. It doesn't necessarily translate into being a good outdoor trail runner.
Yeah.
So we work on a lot of stuff like that. The other thing is learning and being able to complete the obstacles, right? So a lot of the obstacles are very grip and upper body intensive. So obviously I like to look out for, my athletes' health. So if they're going to be doing a lot of stuff on the monkey bars and all these other types of swinging obstacles, we obviously look at like the mobility of their thoracic spine and their shoulders. Because obviously that could hinder their progress in some of these grip intensive obstacles that look more like an American Ninja Warrior type style. I don't know if you've seen them. They have twisting monkey bars. There's swinging from rings. There's rope climbing, climbing all different heights of walls, different inverted walls that are tilted backwards. So you need to have a really good amount of relative body strength. So I'm going to immediately start looking at, can somebody hang from a bar? Can they do pull-ups? And like I said, are their shoulders healthy enough to really dive into doing a lot of this work? Which I think is something a lot of people who get into the sport run into. They really want to get better at this stuff. So they start hammering away at dead hangs and one arm hangs and towel pull-ups and, all this other stuff. And end up just getting a lot more beat up and really not making a lot of progress. So just making sure, we start with a lot of things like the TRX, progressing into all different types of things that'll get you better at pull-ups and better at hanging and better at handling your own body weight.
I love it because it's so non-traditional assessments. If someone comes in to work with you and see you for the first time, maybe it's, hey, you're going to meet me. We're going to go run this trail together. Or meet me at this hill and I'm going to watch you run down this hill.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's cool though, because you're doing all these different types of training, and I've seen you do beach workouts. I see you do stuff around the neighborhood. Like you said, you go to parks, you do all these different things. So I can see why you can get addicted to it, because it's so unconventional that, it keeps you interested. It keeps your attention. So I think to keep going down this road is, so for yourself, tonight is the night before race day. This is a week leading up to the race. And then I'm curious, what have you been doing the past month? So when was your last race? And just tell us a little bit about your training. How does it change if you have 2 races close back to back, or if you have a month off? Do you have a pre-race routine? I would love to hear it.
Yeah, it's really interesting for me right now because I'm not giving myself much of a break, which was a decision I made this year. So I'm running a lot of multiple race weekends where I'm running up to 3 or 4 races in a weekend, which is where, so, in these 40, 50 races that I'm running this year, they're not spread out into individual weekends.
Yeah.
I can't be away from work that much. I can't travel that much. So I'm cramming a lot of it into these multi-race weekends, which have become a big thing. Next month, I'm going to try to do the first bout of 4 races in one weekend, which should be interesting. So I'm not a very common case of trying to build these training cycles.
Yeah.
Obviously with a regular athlete, at the beginning of the year, we would look at their race schedule, see when their races are, how far are they apart, and when can we get some real training in, and then when does the recovery and rest need to happen. So it's been really interesting trying to plan my own life right now, having so many back-to-back race weekends, multiple race weekends, having a full-time job and trying to make it all work.
There's a lot happening.
The planning process has been interesting. So for example, 2 weekends ago was my last race. So June 1st weekend. So to give you an example, the race was in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I live in New Jersey. So I drove on Friday to Fayetteville, North Carolina. It was about a 10.5-hour drive. And then I ran multiple laps of a super race, which is about 15K on Saturday morning. So I drove 10.5 hours from New Jersey to North Carolina, woke up in the morning, ran an 8.6 mile race, had lunch, and then ran another 8.6 mile race, and then drove from North Carolina back to New Jersey. And then I'm racing again tomorrow. So my, training program now is all based around recovery. Right. So I'm trying to complete this mission, in all these races and hit all of these goals without falling apart.
Yeah. So what did Sunday look like for you, or what does it look like for you right after the race, before you're driving? what does that week look like? Because you're definitely, in terms of training cycles, it's like you're peaking right now, but you're peaking for a year. I mean, you're doing something that not many people are going to be doing. So you're not looking to get gains, it's just maintaining and just
Yeah.
performing. So I'm curious, what did the past 2 weeks look like, or what are you maybe doing now after races or before races that you weren't doing last year?
Yeah. So like I said, like if I'm traveling, as soon as I get back, I'm starting that recovery process. So, I'm very big with my athletes on hydration, drinking clean water, and then starting that recovery process as soon as possible. So as soon as you're done, you're trying to get rehydrated, you have to get a good meal in. And then, I'm also very big on sleep. So no matter where I'm traveling or what race I'm going to, if I have a race earlier, I try to get in bed earlier, and still get 8 hours. When you called me, I was scared I was going to have to run to the bathroom like 5 times during this call because I'm like super hydrated right now. Just had a good meal earlier. So I used some other strategies too. So earlier today I was using the Hypervolt, which is, I don't know if you guys have, it's much like the Theragun. Yep. So the vibration therapy, the massage guns. So I have one at home. I have one at work. So I use that for more of like the soft tissue work. Also at work, I'm lucky enough we have the Normatec boots.
Nice.
So when I get back from a long drive, I'm going right in, throwing on the Normatec boots for a half hour. I'm slugging some water, getting back in bed early, and then as soon as I wake up, hitting the Theragun. And then I also use a lot of I don't know if you guys are into the FRC. But a lot of FRC principles of just moving your joints around as much as possible. So even when I had those long drives down in North Carolina, for example, if I was stopping to get gas, I was like, the weirdo in the parking lot for 10 minutes doing some joint circles and
Doing a bunch of cars.
Yeah, doing some single leg deadlift and trying to get my glutes active again and lengthen some stuff out. Because I think it's a killer, and especially for a lot of people I work with, they're pretty sedentary at work. So it's like we gotta, especially after a race or leading up to a race, we got to keep these people moving, keep them loose, keep them hydrated, keep them eating a sound diet. So like when you're an athlete, even if it's just recreationally, through obstacle course racing or anything else, it's, you have to have a well-rounded approach of just really taking care of yourself. Which,
it sounds like you need to find a race buddy and it's driving, and you guys are just sharing the Normatec in the passenger seat.
Yeah, it's cool because I have come to find some crazy people who also love this sport. So I've got like 20, 25 buddies. So most of the time I'm not traveling alone, and it is great because
good.
A big part of the sport too that I love is about the community aspect. Which we could talk more about later. But in terms of motivation, I think it's the best thing that you could have is just a team of people who, when you're doing some crazy shit, they're right there with you. You're not alone, and at the end of the day, it's like everybody's laughing about it.
That's good. Yeah. So I kind of want to go into that, and we're going to cover some different dimensions of it, you could say. So with coaching, you're putting your body through some crazy stuff this year. So if anything happens, feel free to reach out to me because you're pushing the limits. But from a coaching aspect, I mean, we talked about before, it's an intense sport. It's brutal. You're trying to teach people how to take care of their bodies, how to continue racing. So this is the Prehab Guys platform. What is Spartan Race Prehab? I mean, what are you teaching people that maybe aren't racing 40 times a year that they need to do? Maybe it's something with their training programs or after races. And we already touched on a few things, but let's hear that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I talked about before, before I have people diving into a lot of the more calisthenic work that we're going to be doing, I want to make sure that they're able to handle, what needs to happen. And, same thing. It's just so common at races that you see these people that dive into their first race and end up, tearing a bicep, swinging from something or pulling themselves over a wall and, tons and tons of rolled ankles, and you can just tell some of these people are a little bit unstable and haven't run full speed down a rocky hill ever before.
Weekend warrior.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sad because you see these, you start the race and 10 minutes later, people are just getting carted off the mountain.
Oh my God.
You see people up with ice packs wrapped all over them, and just, same thing, passing out on course. And they're just
scary.
Like I said, they're just clear. Yeah, it's the sport is based around being uncomfortable, which is why I think a lot of people like it, because when to cross the finish line, you have to jump over the fire. So they build a log wall and light it up with a torch, and that's how you cross the finish line. You jump over a 5-foot wall of fire. So the sport's based around being, making yourself super, super uncomfortable, so that when you jump across the fire and they hand you a medal, it's like, it's very meaningful, right? Like, you feel like a Navy SEAL, or you feel like a badass, or, whatever. And they kind of play to your fears. Like, they make you, swim underneath of walls. They make you jump over the fire. They make you climb really tall cargo nets. So for somebody who's a first timer, you're going to probably be facing some type of fear that you really don't like. And it's a huge part of the sport. But when you get these people that show up and they're just really not ready for this stuff, which is why injuries are so common.
Yeah.
So obviously, as a coach, I just want my athletes to make it through the season as healthy and as happy as possible. And just like you said, I mean, I love, looking at your stuff, because prehab is such a big part of that. So when you're working on something like Spartan has all different types of twisting monkey bars and all these different types of obstacles. So you're going to be hanging from stuff all day long. So you obviously need to build up strength and endurance and that, that quality and that ability. So if you're going to be doing that, and especially people, when they start the sport, increase things like running, crazy amounts of miles that they're not used to. I mean, prehab is everything, right? Because this, like you said, is, I meet somebody at the trail for the first time and they're kind of going on their first run. This is something that could like beat them up pretty bad.
Yeah.
And a lot of this, it's funny, I take groups of adults to playgrounds all the time to, use the kids' monkey bars and climb up stuff. And, it's a little bit of an assessment process to see if this person can physically do it. But it's funny, like, that's training for us too. You know what I mean? Like you said, we always joke that we're just like the crazy people at the gym that end up on Instagram because people are taking videos like, what is this person doing? So, I mean, it's fun as a coach. Like, I got to be the person who needs to keep these people healthy enough to keep doing that. So like I said, I took the FRC course. I've taken, the FMS course several times. So I'm always screening these people and looking at things and looking at, active versus passive gap, right? So things that, how is this person's functional range of motion? Can they actually perform these movements and do these things? Because my ultimate goal as a coach is to get these people through all these races and events that they want to do, in the safest way possible.
Yeah. And, we've talked a lot about how interesting and unconventional the training is, but let's not get it wrong here. And I can, account for Ryan. I see how he trains his clients and the stuff he posts, and you still can't go wrong with getting strong with the traditional movements. I mean, I know that I see you having people doing farmer carries, doing deadlifts, doing squats, goblet squats, you name it. It's getting very, very good at the traditional movements and mastering those, but you have to supplement what the crazy sport demands at the same time.
Oh, totally. And like you just said, I mean, at the end of the day, you just develop, as many fitness qualities as possible.
Yeah.
Strength being the ultimate one, right? So, I'm big, I'm a coach through Strongfirst as well. I'm really big on kettlebell training and strength principles. So don't get me wrong. It's like the majority of our training is just sound strength training. And like you said, prehab work and just, all around just taking care of yourself.
Yeah, because you had that one kettlebell class. I literally wanted to come do it. You're posting it all the time, and I'm not in my apartment now, but I have two 70-pound kettlebells sitting in my place, 60 pounds, a 50-pound, a 35, and it's literally all you need. Like you can get a conditioning workout with a kettlebell. You can get a strength workout with a kettlebell. You can get just stability work, whatever you want to do. All you need is just a cannonball of iron, and
Yeah,
you're
with the
good to
handle on the top. Yeah. And you've seen, I mean, if you follow me, you'll see my posts from my ultimate garage gym that I've built over the
That's
years.
right.
And like you said, I mean, I bought the farmer walk handles. I bought a sled. I bought enough weights to deadlift with. Bought some cable pulleys. And, you know, if you just apply the right principles, if you apply just quality strength training principles, you don't need the fancy stuff. You know, you just need, it's the biggest part of it. You need to stay motivated and you need to work hard. And you could, I mean, I think I've been proof that you could do it in the smallest space possible,
Yeah.
with very limited equipment. You know, all you need is a little bit of weight and, you know, you're good to go.
So I think a good thing to do now with some closing thoughts is how do you continue to stay motivated? How do you continue to motivate others even when do you ever doubt yourself? I mean, you're doing a crazy number of races this year compared to last year, and you're leading groups of adults to playgrounds. You're doing things that no one else is doing, which is amazing. But with anything in life, to keep the foot on the gas pedal 24/7, and to find internal motivators, and as a coach to motivate everyone around you, shed some light on it, because I'm sure there's coaches that are going to tune into this, and other professionals that motivate others, or athletes that are trying to race. What works for you?
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is that you need to give somebody a goal that's important to them. You know, I think a lot of people don't set goals, which, you know, I think is a huge problem, obviously. You know, they're just in the gym spinning their wheels and hoping that something happens, you know, and there's really no direction. You know, like I said, I think if you give someone a goal that is important to them, they'll be more motivated to go after it. And I think Spartan Race is a perfect example of that. You know, there's nothing like the instant feedback of going to a race and seeing how you did, you know, so how you felt running, how you did on the obstacles, were you able to lift up the Atlas stone, were you able to get through the monkey bars? Um, so it's just amazing. I see some of these adults who go through their first race and they're just shocked at all the things that they can't do. And at the same time, all the things that they can do. Um, and it's just instantly like the race is a very, you know, you're in a very heightened emotional state during the race. Um, so when you finish, it's just like, you know, you're overcome with this feeling of like, I want to do it again and I want to do better. And when I take people to their
Yeah.
first race, they come back to the gym like so fired up, just to like, I never want to do that obstacle again. I don't want to fall like an idiot on the trails 5 times again. And it's just like instant feedback of what you need to get better at. And then it's amazing because then you have that retest at your next race. You know that obstacle is coming and you've been training for it for weeks and like
Yeah.
you can't wait to get your hands on it again. So it's amazing of like to have that instant feedback of like, I could do that or I can't. And that's where the obstacle racing comes in and it's so amazing. So to keep like, you know, I set the goal this year of really just to see how much I can do and how far I could push, right? So
Yeah.
it started last year. I mean, like I talked about, I did a 24-hour race, having never been a runner, you know, my entire life, to the point where like, you know, when I told family or friends that I was going to do this, they didn't think it was me. Like my family thought it was like, it must've been somebody else in the family that's going to do it. Or like, you know, it's a joke. But to me, someone who came from more of a strength background, that was never much of a cardio person, I wanted to take on the challenge of turning into somewhat of an endurance athlete, because I knew it would be really, really challenging. And it's been really, really rewarding to take on something that you're not good at, that you're super uncomfortable with. And I'd like to encourage people to do that for themselves, and to just keep pushing the envelope. And like, if you just, if you kind of shoot for the stars, who knows where you'll end up. So I've seen people, completely transform their lives through this and do things that they never thought were possible for themselves. And I'm able to get behind them and push them towards that because I'm trying to do it for myself.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to continue to every single year, push for more and more and more until, eventually, who knows if you find a limit, you know what I mean? Like who knows what you're capable of until you get out there and you really give it a go. So I set a ridiculous goal of finishing like 40 to 50 races this year. At this rate, I actually think I'll finish more than that. Who knows? I keep adding more travel and more registration to the calendar. And like I said, at this point, it's getting it done. It's recovering. And then, all the lessons I'll learn this year, I'll be able to teach all of that to all of my athletes and everybody around me to just, it's like to show them what's possible. You know what I mean? You took a kid that used to power lift, play football, was close to 300 pounds at one point, and you have him run for 24 hours. It's inspiring, right? It's cool to be able to do that, and for people to help, be a part of that as well. So I've had all these different people that want to come to races with me and kind of join the journey. And, we've seen a lot of lives transform because of it. And, being a coach for this now keeps me motivated because I know that as soon as I finish a race, everybody is going to be calling me and, they want to hear about it. And so it's like, I just, I want to keep pushing it and make everybody proud because that's how I'm getting everybody to work hard for themselves.
I'm ready to race. I got fired up.
I'm contagious, man. If you hang around me long enough, you'll be flying over here for tomorrow morning.
I love it though. It's like this positive feedback loop because if you ever have down yourself or you're losing motivation, you have so many people around you that are banking on you to motivate them. So it's constantly just bouncing off of one another. And it's this team effort. It's like human instinct to just be competitive and always try to be better and do better. So for anyone that was competitive in anything, even if it was sports or not, to go and do an obstacle race, you're going to want to come back for more, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And like you said, the community aspect of it, it's like sometimes when I'm out on the course and I have a long day and a long race and I'm not feeling well, it's like even when I don't feel strong, I know I have to be strong, for all those other people that are kind of counting on me. And to have that responsibility has been amazing. And I think it translates to, a lot of my adults that are racing, they're getting their kids involved. They have the Spartan Kids race and they're taking their whole family to events now. And same thing, the kids want to watch, mom or dad, swing from the monkey bars. So when they run up and they're not feeling good, they have their kids standing there watching, and it's like it gives them this extra just boost of intensity. And, it's amazing to see what that does for a lot of people. So I have people, like I said, they come back from their first race and they like sign up for 30 races as soon as they get home. Because they're just like I said, you jump through the fire, they give you a medal, and you just went to hell and back and did a whole bunch of stuff you never thought you'd do before in your life. Maybe you're afraid of heights or you're afraid of water. You're rolling through the barbed wire that's over poison ivy, and you finish and you're all messed up, and it's like it just it keeps you coming back and it keeps you pushing the envelope, and it like you said, it gets super addicting super quick.
I hope this podcast honestly inspires someone to race. So Ryan, how can people find you? How can people learn more about you, learn more about obstacle races? Who can you motivate?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're interested in, I would say, I'm a little biased, but I say Spartan Race is the best thing on the planet. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, you just go to Spartan.com, find a race. I'm sure no matter where you live, there's a race near you somewhere. And then if you're interested in the best place to follow me is on my Instagram account, which is Spartan Coach Ryan, which will be linked on this IG Live right now. But you'll see me posting, my biggest thing now, as much education that I've done, my biggest thing now is motivating and inspiring other people. When I became a coach, I thought I had to learn as much as possible and take all these different courses and read all the books and listen to all the podcasts. But I think, and I think you guys would agree that, as much as it doesn't matter if you can't get somebody to go out there and do it.
Of course.
So my whole thing right now is just trying to get people fired up and trying to get people motivated. And the way I do that is through Spartan Race. And it's amazing because once they get hooked, they start eating better. They start doing their mobility work. They start recovering better. They start staying hydrated. And, a byproduct of that is people losing 30, 40, 50 pounds, getting into the best shape of their life. And it all just started with a 5K obstacle race.
Yeah.
So really, everything for me now is just trying to be an inspiring figure to get people to do all of these things. So I'm getting out there and doing all the things, literally all the things that I can get my hands onto. Because I just want people to follow in those footsteps and do it for themselves and get fired up about something, so that, because I know the byproduct of that is that they're going to change their life. They're going to eat better, they're going to sleep more, they're going to hydrate better, but it just all starts with that spark that gets them going. And, it's really been incredible to see what happens from there.
Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
That's what it's all about, man. I love Spartan Race because I know tomorrow morning when I wake up, I'm going to go run around through some, snag my arm on some thorn bushes and get some poison ivy and probably fall off something and get beat up. And, maybe I'm weird, but I can't wait. I'm fired up just thinking about it.
That's awesome.
So if you're looking to get your life back together, I'd say dive right in and just, get out there and see what you're made of.
I'm going to have to do one now.
Oh, dude,
it was awesome having you on, man. I'm really glad
that
you joined, and I hope this inspires someone.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. Everybody out there, just try it out.
Thank you for listening to this podcast with Ryan and I. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. It helps us tremendously getting the word out. If you enjoyed this and you want more information about obstacle course races, don't hesitate to reach out to Ryan. You can find his contact information in the show notes. Take care. Thank you.